The last thing Marcus Webb said before he walked into my daughter's wedding was, "By this time next year, she won't even remember who she used to be." He was talking to his best man. He was standing in my parking lot, and he had absolutely no idea I could hear every word. "My name is Dale Hutchins. I'm 58 years old. I own a small auto repair shop in Knoxville, Tennessee. I am not a detective. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even particularly good at confrontation, but I am very good at staying quiet in small spaces. And that one skill, that one ordinary, unremarkable skill, is the reason my daughter is standing in her own clinic today instead of disappearing into someone else's plan. Here's what happened. Marcus Webb first walked into my shop 14 months before the wedding. Brand new Audi. Expensive watch. Zero eye contact. He booked a routine oil change, sat in my waiting area for 45 minutes, and left without tipping or saying goodbye. I remember thinking, that's a man who doesn't notice the people around him. I had no idea how right I was, or how much I'd end up using it against him. 4 months after that first visit, my daughter Sarah brought him to Sunday dinner. She looked at him the way you hope your daughter looks at someone. Completely, openly, without armor. My wife Carol squeezed my knee under the table. I smiled, nodded, passed the bread rolls, and made a mental note that something about Marcus Webb felt like a car running slightly too smooth. You know that feeling? When an engine sounds perfect, but too perfect. That's usually when something's about to break. It was a Tuesday morning in March. Marcus had booked his 6-month service. I was already deep under a pickup truck in the next bay, transmission job, 2 hours minimum. My boots were sticking out. That's all anyone could see of me. Marcus settled into the waiting area 10 feet away and called someone. Speakerphone. I didn't move. Propose Saturday. She said yes. Obviously. I smiled a little under that truck. Then his voice shifted, dropped half a tone. The way people talk when they think no one important is listening. Here's the thing, though. The PT career becomes negotiable once we're married. I stopped breathing. Right now, she thinks everything's a joint decision. Pause. That's fine. For now. I lay completely still under that truck for a long time after he left. Not because of the transmission. Because I'd just heard a man describe my daughter's future like it was a business acquisition he hadn't fully closed yet. I started paying attention differently after that. Not spying. Just watching. The way you watch an engine you don't quite trust yet. Next Sunday dinner, Marcus finished Sarah's sentences. Not playfully. Correctively. When Sarah mentioned a work conference in Atlanta, Marcus smiled and said, "We'll see about the timing." Not "we'll figure it out together." "We'll see." Like the calendar already belonged to him. I mentioned it casually to Carol that night. She was quiet, then said, "One data point isn't a pattern, Dale." She was right, so I waited for more. I didn't have to wait long. 6 weeks later, Marcus came in for a tire rotation. I was in my office. Door cracked open. Direct line of sight to the waiting area. He was on the phone with someone from a moving company. 2nd week of June. 2-bedroom in Charlotte, North Carolina, 4 hours from Knoxville. No, I'll handle the details. My fiancé doesn't need to worry about the logistics. I set my coffee down very carefully. Doesn't need to worry about the logistics of her own life. That sentence sat in my chest like a piece of metal I couldn't shake loose. Because 3 days earlier, Sarah had been sitting at our kitchen table telling Carol how excited she was to redecorate her Knoxville apartment after the wedding. 2 completely different futures. Same woman living in the middle of both. And only one person knew it. Over the next few weeks, I started quietly verifying things. Nothing illegal. Nothing complicated. Just facts. The Charlotte job offer, confirmed. Accepted 2 months ago. Neighborhoods already researched. Schools already compared. His mother already told about the move. A financial advisor already consulted about restructuring their accounts so his income stayed primary. All of it decided. None of it discussed. And then the call that made my stomach turn completely. Once Sarah stops doing the PT thing full-time, everything simplifies. Stops doing the PT thing. Sarah had spent 6 years building her career. She had a waiting list of patients. Kids with injuries she'd been rehabbing for months. She talked about them by name. Marcus talked about her career like it was a phase she hadn't grown out of yet. That was the moment I stopped asking myself, am I overreacting? The rehearsal dinner was at a steakhouse downtown. Both families. About 35 people. I had a plan. I was going to pull Sarah aside quietly. Show her everything. Let her decide. That was the plan. Then Marcus stood up to give a toast. He talked about love, about partnership, about building a future together. He used that word 4 times. Together. And I watched Sarah look at him with complete trust. That's when my plan changed. I didn't pull her aside. I waited. Marcus finished his toast. Everyone applauded. He sat down, leaned over to his best man, and said something quietly. The best man nodded and laughed. I was 2 tables away. I couldn't hear it, but I didn't need to, because Sarah's maid of honor, a woman named Jess who'd been Sarah's best friend since college, was sitting right next to them. And Jess heard everything. She looked across the room at me. Just once. I gave her the smallest nod. 20 minutes later, Jess asked Sarah to come to the restroom with her. They were gone for 11 minutes. When Sarah came back, she didn't sit down. She walked directly to Marcus. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't make a scene. She simply placed her hand flat on the table in front of him and said, loud enough for the people nearby to hear, "When were you going to tell me about Charlotte?" The table went silent. Marcus tried to laugh it off. "Babe, this isn't." "The moving company," Sarah said quietly. "June 2nd. 2-bedroom apartment." His face changed. "How did you?" "When, Marcus." Not a question anymore. He had no answer, because there wasn't one. There had never been a plan to tell her. That was the whole point. Sarah nodded slowly, like something she'd half suspected had just confirmed itself. She took off the ring. Not dramatically, not with tears, with the calm of a woman who had just been handed clarity she didn't ask for but absolutely needed. She set it on the table in front of him. Then she turned to the room, family, friends, everyone, and said, "I'm sorry, dinner's on me tonight," and walked out. The weeks after were hard. I want to be honest about that, because these stories usually skip the hard part. Sarah grieved. She'd loved him, or the version of him he'd let her see. That loss was real, and it deserved to be treated that way. She was angry at Marcus. She was angry at Jess for keeping my secret. She was angry at me, for a while, for not telling her sooner. That was fair. All of it. I gave her space. Not because it was easy, because she needed it more than I needed to be forgiven quickly. 3 months later, she called me on a Sunday morning. No reason. Just called. We talked for an hour about nothing important. Her patience. My shop. A road trip she was thinking about taking alone. That phone call was worth more to me than any apology. 8 months after the rehearsal dinner, Sarah was named clinic director. The job Marcus had called the PT thing. The career he decided would become negotiable. She called me after she got the news. I could hear her smiling through the phone. "They gave me my own office, Dad." "Yeah." "With a window." I laughed. "That's the one that counts." She laughed too, and for a second, I just listened to that sound. A few weeks ago, Sarah stopped by the shop on a Saturday. No appointment. Just stopped by. She helped me reorganize a pot shelf, something she'd been telling me was a disaster for years. She wasn't wrong. At some point, without looking up, she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Always." That first day, under the truck, when you heard him say what he said. She paused. "Why didn't you just confront him right there?" I thought about it for a second. "Because angry fathers make easy villains," I said, "and I didn't want him to be the story." She looked at me. "I wanted you to be the story," I said. "Your choice, your voice, your ending." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she went back to sorting pots. And after a while, very quietly, she said, "Good call, Dad." I've thought about that conversation a lot since then, about what it actually means to protect someone you love. It doesn't mean solving problems for them. It doesn't mean making decisions on their behalf, no matter how certain you are that you're right. It means making sure they have the truth, and then getting out of the way. Because the most dangerous thing in that whole story wasn't Marcus Webb. It was the idea that someone else always knows better than you do about your own life. That idea doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from people who love you. And the only thing that stops it, every single time, is someone who trusts you enough to hand you the whole truth and say, "You decide." Thanks for listening.